In the 1970s, farm fields became a battleground. Engineers, drunk on horsepower and reckless ambition, bolted 3 engines onto one frame, hung the cab out over the back axle, and built tractors that rolled on 6 wheels. Some of these machines were genuinely brilliant, years ahead of everything around them, and almost all of them flopped, bankrupted their makers, or got quietly axed before farmers ever warmed to them. These are 10 dazzling 1970s tractors that crashed and burned. Let's count them down. Number 10. Allis-Chalmers 440. By the early 1970s, the big 4-wheel drive super tractor was the thing every farmer wanted, and Allis-Chalmers had nothing to sell them. That was the problem. Allis had actually dabbled in 4-wheel drive back in 1963 with the T16, a clumsy machine repurposed from an industrial loader, and it convinced no one. So when the articulated horsepower race heated up, Allis found itself badly behind, with all of its engineering talent tied up developing the new 7000 series row crop tractors. The company couldn't spare the budget or the time to design a big 4-wheel drive from scratch. So it went shopping. After being turned down once, Allis-Chalmers signed a deal in 1971 with Steiger, the Minnesota firm famous for its lime green giants, to build them a tractor. The result, launched as a mid-year 1972 model, was the Allis-Chalmers 440 land handler. Number 9. Valmet 1502. Finland's Valmet had built a reputation through the 1960s and 1970s on tough, turbocharged 4-cylinder tractors that punched well above their weight. So in 1975, when Valmet decided to go big, it didn't just make a bigger tractor, it made a genuinely strange one. The Valmet 1502 was the company's first 6-cylinder tractor powered by a turbocharged 6.6-liter diesel producing 136 horsepower. But the engine wasn't the headline. The headline was the wheels. The 1502 was a 6-wheeler riding on a tandem bogie rear axle, 2 pairs of driven wheels at the back instead of 1. The idea was sound traction engineering: spread the weight, reduce ground pressure, claw through the soft, wet ground of a Finnish autumn without sinking or compacting the soil. On paper, it was clever. In the field, it was a hard sell. The 1502 was heavy, pushing 7.5 tons, long, tall, and expensive to build with all that extra running gear. Farmers looked at the cost and the complexity and mostly shrugged. Valmet's own historians are blunt about it. Demand was weak, and the 6-wheeler was never a great sales success. It stayed in production from 1975 to 1980, and then quietly disappeared, having never caught on outside a small circle of enthusiasts. Valmet learned its lesson and went a more conventional route, eventually partnering with Volvo's tractor division at the end of the decade and growing into the international player we now know as Valtra. The 1502's real legacy is that of a cult curiosity, a tractor so unusual that surviving examples are treasured oddities, including one parked at the old factory awaiting restoration. It was a bold answer to a real problem. Farmers just didn't think the problem was worth the price of the answer. Number 8. Minneapolis-Moline A4T 1600 white Plainsman. This one stings, because Minneapolis-Moline actually did something the industry giant struggled with. It built a clean-sheet, in-house articulated 4-wheel drive, and it did it astonishingly fast. In the late 1960s, White Motor Corporation owned a whole stable of farm brands: Oliver, Cockshut, and Minneapolis-Moline. Farmers wanted more power, so White's engineers designed an articulated 4-wheel drive almost entirely from off-the-shelf parts and brought it from idea to production in roughly 8 months, a blistering pace. The result appeared in 1969 wearing 2 badges: the Minneapolis-Moline A4T 1400 and its identical twin, the Oliver 2455. A bigger version, the A4T 1600, followed in 1970 with a 6-cylinder Moline diesel making around 143 PTO horsepower, available in diesel or LP gas. There was even a patriotic red, white, and blue paint scheme version called the Plainsman, meant to be sold across both Minneapolis-Moline and Oliver dealers. It was innovative, it pivoted in the middle for traction and tight turns, and it genuinely worked. So why is it a failure? 2 reasons. First, the numbers. Across the entire A4T run from October 1969 to May 1972, Minneapolis-Moline built just 1,676 of them. That's tiny. Second, and this is the brutal part, the badges themselves were doomed. In 1974, White rolled out its own silver-painted Field Boss tractors under the single White brand name and pulled the plug on the heritage badges. The proud Minneapolis-Moline name, which had been on tractors for decades, was retired forever. So was Oliver. The A4T was a brilliant little machine that became collateral damage in a corporate consolidation. It proved Minneapolis-Moline's engineers could still innovate with the best of them, right before the company that owned them decided their name wasn't worth keeping. Today, the Red Plainsman is one of the rarest and most sought-after artifacts of a brand that simply got switched off. Number 7. County. The 4 equal-wheel drive Fords. Long before four-wheel drive was a checkbox on every tractor brochure, a small English firm in Fleet, Hampshire was the master of it. County Commercial Cars started in 1929 converting Ford trucks, moved to crawler conversions of Fordson tractors in 1948, and by the 1960s and 1970s had perfected something special. They took standard Ford tractor skid units and turned them into proper four-wheel drive machines, often with 4 equal-sized wheels driven through twin prop shafts. A county was a serious piece of engineering. Low center of gravity, huge traction, brilliant on hillsides and in mud that would beach an ordinary tractor. The big wheelers like the 1474 and the flagship 1884, the latter making 188 horsepower by 1980, were imposing, capable beasts. County built over 30,000 machines in its lifetime and earned a devoted following that survives to this day, with restored examples now fetching premiums of £20,000 and more. And then Ford killed them. Not with a gun, but with a price list. Through the 1970s, Ford began offering its own factory four-wheel drive tractors. Suddenly, the thing County did better than anyone was something you could just order from a Ford dealer, cheaper and with full factory backing. County's whole reason to exist evaporated. The specialist conversion business shrank dramatically. By February 1983, County Commercial Cars was in financial trouble and went into receivership. A Shropshire dealer bought the remains and kept a trickle of production going under new ownership through the rest of the decade. But the magic was gone. The very last Counties were built in 1990. It's a classic tale of the innovator getting swallowed by the giant whose product they improved. County's four-wheel drive expertise was genuinely ahead of its time. The tragedy is that the time caught up and Ford simply did it in-house and left its old partner with nothing to sell. Number 6. Ford FW Series. Speaking of Ford, while it was busy undercutting County, Ford had a problem of its own at the top of its range. Blue tractor customers who wanted serious articulated horsepower had nowhere to go, and Ford didn't have a big four-wheel drive of its own. So in 1977, Ford did exactly what Allis-Chalmers had done. It went to Steiger. The FW Series, FW20, FW30, and the monstrous FW60 were badge-engineered Steigers, painted Ford blue. And here's the kicker. There were essentially no Ford components in these Ford tractors at all. They were built in Fargo, North Dakota, on Steiger's wide-frame Panther platform, powered by Cummins engines rather than anything from Ford. The range-topping FW60 was a genuine beast, a turbocharged Cummins V8 making 335 horsepower. On paper, perfect. Ford dealers finally had a giant to sell. In reality, it flopped in its home market. American farmers knew exactly what these were. They knew Steiger, they respected Steiger, and given the choice, they'd rather buy a real lime green Steiger than a blue-painted copy. The FW series simply didn't sell in the United States the way Ford had hoped. The range was saved, ironically, by an accident of geography. When Ford tentatively tried the FW in Europe, it discovered a niche. British and European farmers, who couldn't easily get Steigers, took to the big Fords. Sales in Britain and the rest of Europe were enough to keep the FW range alive, though only the FW30 and FW60 were ever officially brought into the UK. It was a tractor that survived in spite of its core market, not because of it. The whole FW experiment ended in 1982, when Case IH bought Steiger and Ford had to go find a new partner, eventually buying Versatile of Canada to build its big tractors instead, a 335 horsepower V8 giant, and its main legacy was teaching Ford that farmers could spot a rebadge a mile away. Number 5. British Leyland's Blue Tractors. This isn't one tractor, it's the slow-motion death of an entire British institution. And it's one of the saddest stories on this list, because the tractors themselves were often genuinely good. When British Leyland was formed in 1968, it inherited a respected tractor business with roots in the old Nuffield range. Leyland repainted them from poppy red to a distinctive two-tone blue, moved production to a sprawling plant at Bathgate in Scotland, and through the 1970s built some genuinely advanced machines. They had quiet Q cabs to meet new noise laws, synchromesh transmissions, and at their peak the company was producing something like 19,000 tractors a year and competing head-on with Massey Ferguson, David Brown, and Ford. So what went wrong? Everything around the tractors. British Leyland was a financial catastrophe, partly nationalized in 1975 after near collapse, propped up by the government and bleeding money across its sprawling car, truck, and bus empire. The Bathgate operation had a production capacity that wildly outstripped demand, and at its worst, the wider Leyland vehicles business was reportedly losing in the region of £2 million a week. When tough new management arrived at the end of the 1970s with orders to stop the bleeding, the tractor division was one of the first non-essential branches to be hacked off the corporate tree. In late 1981, the entire Leyland tractor business, tooling, designs, production rights, and a buffer stock of around 600 finished tractors was sold to Marshall Sons & Co. of Gainsborough for about £6 million. Tractor production at Bathgate ended on the 15th of January 1982. Marshall tried to carry the torch, building the old Leyland models under its own name, but it never had the capital to develop genuinely new machines. Market share kept slipping, and by September 1985, Marshall had built only around 1,000 tractors before the receivers were called in. The Blue Leyland, advanced cabs, clever gearboxes, decades of heritage didn't fail because it was a bad tractor. It failed because it was attached to the most troubled industrial empire in British history. Number 4. Mercedes-Benz MB-trac. Here is a tractor that was so far ahead of its time that the whole industry eventually copied its ideas, and it still couldn't survive. In July 1973, Daimler-Benz launched the MB-trac, built at the Gaggenau plant alongside its famous Unimog, with which it shared a drivetrain. The MB-trac threw out the conventional tractor layout entirely. Instead of small front wheels and big rears, it rode on 4 equal-sized wheels. Instead of a cab perched at the back, the boxy cab sat in the middle, between the axles. And most cleverly of all, it offered 3-point hitches and hydraulics at both the front and the rear, so a farmer could run implements front and back at the same time, plowing, tedding, baling, slashing the number of passes needed across a field. It was a system tractor, a genuinely visionary idea about working a field efficiently and gently, minimizing soil compaction. Mercedes built it in light, medium, and heavy-duty versions, eventually producing around 41,000 of them over an 18-year run, topping out with the rare and mighty MB-trac 1800 intercooler at 180 horsepower. So why does it make a failure list? Because measured against its ambition and the resources of Daimler-Benz, the MB-trac never became the mainstream success it should have been. Mercedes deliberately reused Unimog parts to keep costs down, but the sophisticated engineering still made it expensive, and it sat at a real price disadvantage against conventional rivals that did the basic job for less money. It was always a niche machine, beloved by the few, ignored by the many. In the late 1980s, Daimler-Benz partnered with Deutz to develop a successor. Then, citing costs, the project was cancelled. And with no future model to justify the line, Daimler decided to kill the MB-trac entirely. The last one rolled off the line on the 17th of December 1991, and Mercedes simply walked away from tractors, selling the design to a forestry firm. A machine whose core ideas, equal wheels, front and rear implements, low compaction, are now everywhere in modern agriculture, and its own maker couldn't make the business case work. Number 3. John Deere 6030. Not every failure is a flop. Nobody wanted. Some are simply too much tractor for their own good. And the John Deere 6030 is the patron saint of overkill. Introduced for the 1972 model year, the 6030 was the last and greatest of John Deere's new generation big two-wheel drive tractors, where its predecessors, the 5010 and 5020, felt heavy and clumsy. The 6030 was a monster with manners. Its secret was a turbocharged 531 cubic inch diesel. On the official Nebraska test, it was rated at about 175 PTO horsepower, already the most powerful two-wheel drive tractor of its era. But the legend, backed by countless first-hand accounts, is that these engines routinely left the factory making well over 200 horsepower, with some dealer demo units rumored to dyno close to 235 or even 250. It would lift its front wheels off the ground pulling a load of weights, and that's exactly where the trouble started. Deere sold the 6030 as a tractor that could do anything, so farmers naturally tried to make it do everything. They weighted it down and hooked up enormous implements, and the axles didn't always appreciate it. A known weakness was axle bolts backing out under heavy load, leading to bearing failures or even snapped axles. Deere fitted beefier 4-inch axles to late models to address the flexing. Under extreme load, the big engine could even spin a bearing, so it's not unusual to find a 6030 today running a replacement motor. Then there was the market. The 6030 arrived just as the 1973 oil crisis sent fuel prices soaring, and a thirsty 200-plus horsepower brute was a hard pitch. Worried that all that power was scaring buyers off, Deere actually offered a detuned, non-turbocharged version in 1973, and it was a total dud. Just 45 were ordered before Deere pulled the option. In the end, only about 4,028 6030s were built across its 5-year run, a small number for a Deere flagship, and it was quickly overshadowed by the newer Generation 2 tractors on the same dealer lots. Magnificent, overbuilt, and underbought, the 6030 became a cult muscle tractor legend precisely because so few people actually bought one when it was new. Number 2. International Harvester 2+2, Snoopy. Of all the wild swings taken in the 1970s, none looked stranger than International Harvester's answer to the four-wheel drive question. In 1978, IH launched the 2+2 series, the 3388 and 3588, and farmers took one look at that long, drooping nose and christened them Snoopy after the cartoon dog. The 2+2 was a genuinely radical idea. Most articulated tractors were huge prairie machines, useless for row crop work. IH wanted articulation, that pivot in the middle traction and tight turning. But in a tractor, you could actually use between rows of corn, so they did something nobody else dared. They put the engine out front, ahead of the front axle, hung that long hood out over it, mounted the articulation joint in the middle, and bolted the cab onto the rear section, sitting almost over the back axle. The top 3588 ran a 7.6-liter six-cylinder, making nearly 177 horsepower, through a 16-speed +8 reverse powershift transmission, capable of 33 miles per hour. In 1979, they added the 200-horsepower 3788. It was clever engineering. The weird layout gave it serious traction and surprisingly good maneuverability for a four-wheel drive. But it was a tough sell. The looks alone divided opinion. Even loyal IH men called the 2+2 one of the most hideous things the company ever built, with that hood a mile long. It was unconventional, it was unfamiliar, and it asked farmers to rethink what a tractor should look like at the exact moment International Harvester could least afford a gamble. I pressed on, replacing the originals with the second-generation 6388, 6588, and 6788 in 1981, and even had successors, the 7288 and 7488 ready to go. But the company was sliding toward financial ruin. When Tenneco bought International Harvester's agricultural business in 1985 and folded it into Case to create Case IH, the new owners looked at the strange 2+2 concept and quietly killed it. The successors never reached full production, a brave, genuinely original attempt to reinvent the row crop tractor, and it died with the company that dreamed it up. Number 1. Steiger Big Jack. And at number 1, the most gloriously insane tractor of the entire decade. A machine so over the top, it never even made it to a farm. By the mid-1970s, Steiger was the king of the giant articulated tractor. But in 1975, the company decided to find out just how far the idea could be pushed, and the answer was the Big Jack. This was not a tractor. This was 3 tractors having a fist fight inside one frame. The Big Jack was built using the running gear of 3 Steiger Cougar tractors, and it was powered by 3 Caterpillar 3306 engines, yes, 3 of them, for a combined output of around 750 horsepower. To handle all that, it had 3 separate clutches and 3 separate transmissions. The frames could independently oscillate up to 15 degrees to keep all those wheels on the ground over rough terrain. It was a tricycle layout colossus, a rolling proof of concept for the idea that if some power is good, 3 engines worth must be better. There were 2 small problems. The first, the operator had to work all 3 transmissions separately. Imagine trying to coordinate 3 gearboxes by hand while also steering 750 horsepower across a field. It was, by every account, a nightmare to actually drive. The second problem was even simpler. There was no implement on Earth big enough for it to pull. Steiger had built a tractor with no job to do. The Big Jack never got beyond the prototype stage. And it wasn't even Steiger's only overreach of that year. The company also tried a 650 horsepower tandem tractor called the Panther PT650, and that one died as a prototype too. The Big Jack is the perfect machine to end on, because it captures the entire spirit of this list. The 1970s were an era when tractor engineers genuinely believed bigger, weirder, and more powerful was always better, and they had the freedom and the swagger to actually build their fever dreams in steel. Most of those dreams flopped. A few took whole companies down with them, but every one of them was a swing for the fences. The Big Jack just happened to be the biggest swing and the most spectacular miss of them all. Which of these would you want parked in your shed? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this trip through the iron graveyard, hit subscribe because we've got plenty more forgotten machines to dig up.